Hi everyone, and welcome to the Risk Awareness Week. My name is Sidorenko, and I am the author of the Risk Academy blog, so you may have come across some of our videos, publications, or the Free Risk Management book. If you just Google Free Risk Management book, you'll find that it's number one. And over the last 7 years, I have been pushing very strongly for move away from risk management as a corporate governance exercise, as a compliance exercise, to risk management as a decision-making tool. And for simplicity's sake, I call risk management as a decision-making tool, I call that risk management too. So in this session, I'll talk a little bit about the week, the Risk Awareness Week, what can you expect, how you can use it, how you can take advantage of all the free resources we have. And I'll talk a little bit about the latest trends and some of the biggest themes in risk management too. But you have to keep in mind that whenever I say risk management too, I really just mean decision science, probability theory, neuroeconomics, risk psychology, the fundamental sciences that are actually behind risk management. Whenever I say risk management too, I'm basically saying you should be using risk management as a powerful decision-making tool to help your managers, executives, board members, or even yourself in your personal life, make better decisions about uncertain future. Because the future is complex and we do need additional techniques and tools to help us make sense out of it. So, first of all, this is the second session during the Risk Awareness Week. I hope you just finished watching the session that Grant Purdy did. Grant Purdy is one of the godfathers of Australian risk management, and his session, just watched it, his session is mind-blowing. So if you haven't seen it, make sure you later watch it in replay, because I mean that is groundbreaking stuff. This is something that I had a lot of strategic thinking in putting his session first, because he really sets the foundation. Okay, so Risk Awareness Week, 5 days, non-stop workshops, a lot of content, very diverse content, and it's designed for both the risk managers and the decision makers alike. And this is very important. So if you're a risk manager, you will learn a lot. I mean, first you'll unlearn some of the bad practices that just spread like cancer in our career, in our profession. So you'll unlearn a lot, and you will learn some of the more rigorous, scientific, proven, tested and verified approaches that help you help decision makers. And there are a lot of workshops explaining, showing, demonstrating actual models and like literally running simulations live for you, so you can learn. And most of those models will be available for download in each of the workshops. So make sure you tune in for the sessions that you think will be valuable to your career. I did on my part, I tried to do my best to select only the speakers and only the sessions that will help you excel at your risk management career. But that's not just it. This is not a conference for risk managers per se. My idea, and I mean, I'll continue pushing it in Risk Awareness Week 2020, Risk Awareness Week 2021, and so on. My fundamental idea is that Risk Awareness Week is, of course, for decision makers. So if you don't work in risk, many of the sessions will be very, very valuable to you to understand how you can reach out to the risk people and get their help to better plan, better forecast, better budget, make better investment decisions, make better procurement decisions, make better maintenance, asset management, project management decisions, how you as the decision maker can use this very sophisticated tool set that we call risk management. So do tune into the workshops. And risk managers, if you watched a workshop, and I can guarantee you will have a few of those aha moments. If you watch a workshop and you just think to yourself, I wish my executive saw that, or I wish my head of finance or the finance team or the procurement team knew this, because they keep making these mistakes. Well, we've got you sorted. Replays are available forever. So just forward the session to whoever you wanted to see. I mean, any two sessions are free, so just forward those sessions to your colleagues. Once you watched it and you feel that you wish some of our speakers told those messages to your colleagues, just forward the session. It's that easy. And what to expect? 5 days, truth be told, I overdid it a lot, okay? There are close to 60 sessions. It is physically impossible to watch all of them live one by one. I mean, it goes every day, goes 5 days, it goes from like 8 a.m. to 8 or 9 p.m., almost non-stop. I get it, it's physically impossible. That wasn't really kind of my intent. I mean, my objective was to bring as much valuable content as possible. And since I called it Risk Awareness Week from the very beginning, I kind of had the limitation of fitting it into 1 week. And I'm super grateful to all the amazing speakers that agreed to participate. I mean, thank you so much, because this, you helping make this week truly valuable knowledge sharing exercise. And I'm also grateful to 2,000 something people who signed up to watch this. And let me quickly walk you through the logic of the 5 days. Day 1 is all about unlearning. Unlearning everything you heard about GRC, ERM, risk management, unlearning some of the flawed practices that just penetrated our profession, and learning a better way, finding out what's the better alternative for all the artifacts that we have in risk management. How can we kind of move away from this risk speak that no one understands except the consultants and auditors, it seems, and how can we actually stop talking nonsense and start being helpful to the decision makers? I mean, this is the groundbreaking day that I recommend every risk management professional watch, and try and watch as many workshops during day 1 as you can, because it's very, before you go into the solutions, and all the other days are dedicated to telling you how to actually do it properly. But you will, unless you unlearn what you know about risk management right now, you will not appreciate those solutions. You will not understand the significance of what people are telling you. You will think it's a maturity issue. It's not. Most of the things are not about more or less mature. Most of the things that are talked about in day 1 is about doing something right, or being a useless waste of time cost center for the business. So this is a pretty, these sessions are very, very important to appreciate how can we justify risk management existence in corporations. And the question I always ask is quite simple. When was the last time a decision maker called you and said, I'm about to make a multi-million-dollar decision, can you help me make this decision better? And if your answer is never, or I can't remember, or a long time ago, that's a good indication that you're probably allocating your time to something that is not the right thing. You're spending way too much time on risk management 1, and hopefully during the Risk Awareness Week, we can teach you how to spend more time on risk management 2. So day 1 is all about breaking the status quo, challenging everything we currently consider best practice in risk management. So my favorite day. Day 2 is dedicated to culture, risk psychology, cognitive biases, thinking, the human side of risk management. Again, very important, and very important in 2 ways. Humans are a major component of decision making, obviously, and we don't make as rational decisions as we would like to think we do. There's a lot of scientific research behind that. There's almost 70 years of research in neuroeconomics and neuroscience that teaches us a lot about how human brain works. And our brain works in a very, very unpredictable way when we start thinking about the future. And that's essentially what decision making is about. It's about thinking about the future and making decisions under higher levels of uncertainty. We behave very differently from how we think or how we would like to behave. The good news is we don't have to guess. We don't have to, imagine those things, because scientists, two Nobel Prize winners have done extensive research in Nobel Prizes in economics in 2002. Vernon Smith and Daniel Kahneman, and Richard Thaler in 2017 or 18. I keep forgetting. I think it was 18. And extensive research to give us all the ammunition we need. I mean, all this scientific research into how human brain works gives us a lot of ammunition to make our products, our offer, our risk management, risk analysis offer much more compelling, much better. So day 2 is all about culture psychology, thinking about how we raise awareness, how we make risk analysis not a painful exercise that you have to drag people into, but how do you get decision makers to call you, the risk manager, and ask for your support. Day 3 is all about practical application. So that's when a huge selection of speakers will start talking about and start showing you models, start talking about different techniques they use, start talking about different methodologies. So it's all about practical application. Day 4 is kind of a little bit more of the same, plus there's a focus on operational risk and banking, there's a focus on cyber risk, and there's a focus on technology, using technology to solve some of the risk management challenges and decision-making challenges. And day 5 is again all about practical applications. More models, more examples, more live demonstrations, basically just showing you how to use risk analysis to help different kinds of decisions better. And day 3, day 2, day 5 are great for decision makers, because that's where you will learn how you can improve your own decision making through the better application of risk analysis. So that's 5 days of close to 60 sessions. Again, don't kid yourself, impossible to watch live. So just put them in your calendar, and you can always get back and watch replays. Replays will be available on the same URL that the actual workshop will go live, and the URL for the workshops going live is exactly the same as the URL of the workshop where you registered for the workshop. So it's basically just the same page that will keep changing from announcement to live session to replay, and you'll be able to rewatch it as many times as you like, forever. Replays are not limited by time, so you can always keep coming back to that material and relearn it. And that's why I'm encouraging everyone to sign up as many workshops as they want to see, because you'll be able to come back to it at any stage later. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about risk management too. And I have four themes that are coming out, and I really want to drive them across, because I naively think that these 4 things will help you better appreciate all of the content that the other speakers will give you. But I also feel that these 4 things are fundamental to having a successful risk management implementation. So point number 1, and I've tried really hard to not make it too cheesy, and I know how difficult it is to avoid that consulting talk and get while still getting the message across in a concise manner. So I've tried to summarize it. I'll tell you a story behind each of the points, so to give you more content. And that's why it's important to watch this session and not just download the slides and look through them, because when you look through the slides, you will feel that I'm stating the obvious, you're doing that anyway. That is probably not true. I'm actually saying something very, very groundbreaking, almost the opposite of what most companies are doing in terms of risk management. So whatever I'm saying, keep an open mind. I mean, that's the theme of the conference. Just because you've been doing something in a particular way, or just because your external auditors or consultants are telling you that that is best practice, I mean, may not necessarily be so. So keep an open mind. First point, and I think this is absolutely fundamental. Whenever we talk about risk management, we should be learning from science, not marketing brochures. That is something that I think we kind of were lost in the last 10 to 15 years, or maybe even 20 years in risk management. Many of the concepts that we now consider common practice in risk management, if you go on a quest to find the source of the information, most of those concepts came from a marketing brochure by one of the consulting companies. I mean, that is very, very alarming. And then we kind of try to backfit our our data to those concepts. I mean, for example, risk appetite. I'm old enough to remember when risk appetite appeared, when it was first kind of created, and I think it was by Oliver Wyman. Bad people. On that occasion, I literally remember. I think it was early 2000s when I did a search, and I spent a lot of time searching, trying to find where is this nonsense coming from, and it really literally was coming from an Oliver Wyman brochure, thought leadership as they call it, but it's really just marketing. And it doesn't, as most of those concepts, they don't actually match up to the scientific evidence or the the foundations that that hundreds of years ago have been discovered by different mathematicians and scientists and psychologists and economists and so on. So this is a very important message. If you're going to make an idea your own and you're going to then sell it to your decision makers in the company, you better do the due diligence. I mean, this is this is risk management 101. It's your responsibility as the risk professional to do due diligence on the approaches and techniques then you then bring to your decision makers and use for selling whatever you want to sell, hopefully better decision making. But there are a lot of weird concepts that are being packaged as risk management. And I have, on the Risk Academy channel, I have a very funny video on that. Risk management, if you look at it through the lens of the kind of fundamental sciences, which is probability theory, decision science, risk psychology or neuroscience, these disciplines existed from 500 to like 70 years ago. They were established, sorry, from 500 to 70 years ago. All of these sciences are old, and they have a lot of verified evidence to suggest that something works, something doesn't work. They have a lot of history. And then, approximately in the 1970s, 1980s, something happened to risk management. And I think this is something that is happening to every discipline that is actually complex and highly sophisticated, because thinking about uncertain future is bloody difficult, because no one is still capable of predicting the future. And the only people that came close to it are astrologists, and they have a wonderful tool called horoscopes, as well as some other techniques that they're using. And I hope you kind of get where I'm going with this. Astrology is bullshit, and similar thing happened to risk management. I think in the late 70s, early 80s, it was hijacked by some very, very good salespeople. I mean, Doug Hubbard and Grant Purdy went on a quest recently trying to discover who's the patient zero who is the culprit that created all this nonsense that we today call enterprise risk management. And I think they kind of nailed it to a group of people, all of them, surprise, surprise, Big Four consultants. So thanks for that once again. And the risk management was hijacked and then turned into a huge, marketing money-making machine, which again, they made a lot of money, but so do horoscope writers make a lot of money, and fortune tellers make a lot of money. None of this is real, but they still do. And this is just the kind of the situation where we live in with risk management. Most of the concepts that you would find in risk management books are coming from marketing and actually have no scientific foundation. And if anything, they actually contradict verified research done by scientists. It's just the authors never bothered to investigate or do their proper due diligence on the practices that they write about, because they're more interested in selling stuff than actually adding value to the companies. So do your due diligence. And here are some of the fundamental points. Life is complex, future is unpredictable. Don't dumb down uncertainty to a single number, or what is even worse, to a word like high, medium, or low. Uncertainty is a little bit more complex, and I think it deserves a little bit more respect than just a single number saying the risk level is 17 or the risk level is high. Risk in uncertainty, or the effect of uncertainty on objectives, is not a single number. If anything, it's a range. And that's how we should start thinking about it, and that's how we should be talking about it. And talking about risk as a single possible scenario which will give you an expected loss of 1 million, and the probability of that loss is 15%, is mental. I mean, that is just insanity. And if we're claiming to, I mean, this is it's so crazy that if you talk about uncertainty to any finance professional, any certified accountant or certified financial accountant, even better, they would have a proper conversation. They would have a better, more sensible conversation about risk and uncertainty than supposedly certified and qualified risk managers. So if we're pretending to be the center of excellence for dealing with risk and uncertainty, let's not embarrass ourselves by ignoring some of the most basic, school level math that tells us that uncertainty about the future is not a single number. The volatility, the range, that's what gives us the insights, and that's what gives us the additional information for proper decision making. Luckily, we have all the tools to do it. Luckily, the technology is now free. Luckily, even basic Excel can now support it. And in the next session, for example, Sam Savage will give you a lot more explanation about this particular point, this specific point, why in 1906, a Danish mathematician proved a theory that basically shows that most business plans, budgets, investment proposals, and strategies that are currently done by businesses based on single point estimates are fundamentally wrong. And we can do better than that. And that's, by the way, the important message I wanted to tell you with this as well. I'm giving you the kind of the introduction for the Risk Awareness Week. I'm making all those claims because throughout the week, there will be numerous workshops that actually scientifically prove and show it. Like some of them literally demonstrate by running. I think Graham Keith is going to do a session where he'll do a heat map, and then he'll do a proper risk analysis, and will show you that you don't get the same result, not even close. I mean, you miss the kind of the point so hard using the approach that doesn't work. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. And Sam Savage in the next session will do something similar as well. He will show you, like he will literally demonstrate live how what you think is right is actually not. So stay for the duration of the week. It will be amazing. Every single claim I make in this short presentation is supported by one or more workshops during the Risk Awareness. during the risk awareness week. So life is complex. Don't dumb it down to colors or single numbers. It's you have to treat uncertainty with respect. Second point is even more important, and I mean this is just so fundamental, yet so misunderstood by most risk managers. And Nassim Taleb calls it X and F of X. And this is, for some unknown to me reason, this is surprisingly complex to understand for people. The only people interested in risks or their mitigations in any given corporation, any given organization on the planet, are the risk manager and the internal auditor. The rest of the business couldn't care less. They don't care about risks. They don't care about risk mitigations. That's not how they make decisions. That's not how they live. That's not how they go, what they go to work for. Risk is not the focal point. Risk is only the focal point for the risk manager. You're literally the only person who cares about risks as a kind of output of your risk analysis. The rest of the business, they want to know about F of X, function of X. That means effect of uncertainty on something. What this means is that, and many sessions will show you how to do it, is that when you communicate risks, you shouldn't be saying we have 7 risks and they're all high, or they, the aggregate risk exposure is 15 million. That is not useful. What you should be saying is you have this budget and you've budgeted for 1.5 million. However, due to the risks that may affect this budget, or given the risks that may affect this budget, you should actually budget not 1.5 million, but somewhere between 1.3 and 1.7 million. And if you want to be on the safe side, you should be using the 19th percentile. If you're super risky, if you're super risk-taking, then maybe you should use 10th percentile or 20th percentile. You should be talking about ranges and how the range of your decision changes. So for example, they're saying we will finish this project in 6 months. And the risk manager should say, no, you won't, 70% of the time, because there's a 70% chance that it will take you longer than 6 months to finish. And in fact, 90% of the time, it will take you between 6 and 18 months to finish, and so on. Risk managers always talk ranges, and risk managers always talk confidence intervals, because we're never 100% certain about anything, but we estimate. We estimate future outcomes, and this point is just absolutely fundamental. You will learn during this risk awareness week that risk management is not about managing risk. I mean, this is literally the dumbest thing I keep hearing on LinkedIn every day. Risk management is not about managing risk. Risk management is about making better decisions with risks in mind, making or changing your business processes with risks in mind, or doing something with planning, forecasting, budgeting with risks in mind. That means that you should be communicating your analytics about risk, not as risks, but as effect on something else. So you should be saying, this project will take quicker or longer. This budget will be more or less. You always talk about the business entity, the business objective or the KPI or the decision, and how risks affect that, as opposed to just saying we have 7 or 15 or 20 risks, whether they're red, yellow, or green. Who cares? You're literally the only person who cares about risks. So stop talking about risks. Start talking about effect uncertainty has on something that is actually meaningful for the business. What this means is that your risk reports shouldn't even have risk information in it per se. They should give, if you're talking about an investment project, and the investment project is based on an NPV number or an IRR number, your outcome of your risk analysis should be a new NPV, which is represented as a range, and the new IRR number, which is represented as the range. Again, if you're talking about some of the non-financial risks, you should again highlight how, if those risks happen, how will that affect the budget, the strategy, some of the decisions, you're always trying to translate the risks onto something else. And the next point is that the good news is we don't have to recreate the wheel. I mean, risk analysis has been around for hundreds of years. There's probably a solution for most problems out there. It's all about reaching out to the community and asking who has done something similar before. The bad news is that no one who's done proper risk analysis probably called it risk analysis. But there's a lot of models, there are a lot of examples, there are a lot of case studies which we can learn from that are based on scientific research. And the final point on this for the risk managers, don't learn about risk management from marketing brochures. I mean, COSO ERM, for example, guidelines, that's a marketing brochure written by PwC to sell services, and unfortunately endorsed by many other respectable organizations that apparently don't really understand risk management. That sense, but don't take your learning on risk management from a marketing brochure, because we have 500 years of research in probability theory. We have more than 70, close to 100 years of research in decision science, and we have close to 70 years of research in risk psychology, risk perception, neuroeconomics. All those fields of study already have all the answers. I mean, this is kind of amazing, and how often I get asked about how do you integrate risk management into decision making. It's really simple. You open any textbook on decision science, and that gives you the answer. Like, it literally gives you the methodology: step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. These books have been written decades ago. Just don't recreate the wheel. Same with risk psychology. I mean, what an amazing field of science that has huge implications on risk professions. I mean, did you know that doing risk workshop before lunch pretty much guarantees that you get nonsense results that you can't use for anything? Did you know that doing risk interviews at the end of the day is pointless, because the blood of the person that you're interviewing will not have enough glucose? That means they will not be able to switch on to system 2 thinking. That means they'll pretty much lie to you or deceive themselves all the way through the interview, and you can't use that information for anything. And same with probability theory. Apparently, multiplying likelihood and consequences is nonsense. Apparently, multiplying or ordinal scales it also doesn't make sense. And there are so many limitations and so many learnings we can take from those fields of study that have a huge implication on what risk managers are doing. And we really should stop living in kind of our bubble. And I've just, as I was saying that, I remembered that I wanted an image on this slide, but I forgot to put it. I wanted a huge bubble just bursting. And I want our risk management bubble to burst, because most of the stuff that we have in our risk management bubble is all marketing bullshit that was created by consultants and auditors and national risk management institutes. I mean, just anyway, I'll reserve my my opinion on those types of organizations. But the most of the stuff that's inside our bubble right now has absolutely no foundation in science, has no validation. There's, if anything, it creates worse performance and significantly affects both the reputation of you personally as the risk manager and of the profession overall. I mean, I do training, I do risk management training from time to time, and I love doing sessions for risk managers that have been in their career at least 5 or 6 years, because it's a very easy conversation. We always start, when was the last time CEO or any executive called you to help you do the risk analysis and make them better decisions? Or how serious do executives take on the reports that you generate? How do they use the risk registers that you bring them to change their approach and their decisions? How is your risk analysis linked to the remuneration that the executives receive, and I'm not talking about having a KPI, 5% KPI on participating in the risk management process. No, I'm talking about proper influence on how the whole remuneration structure changes as the result of the risk analysis. And talking to people who have been in the career for quite a while is very rewarding, because they realize that something is not right. They've spent long enough in the career to realize something is missing, because they don't have answers to most of those questions, and that's not normal. I mean, if you've been doing this for so many years and your value is still questioned at every possible occasion, I mean, something's clearly not right. I mean, whatever you're doing it must be a waste of time if nobody gets it. And executives are not smart. They're not silly. They're actually much smarter than us risk professionals, it seems, because they quickly realize that most risk management is just profanity. It's absolute compliance, and they don't have to participate. That's why they send your risk identification forms to their secretaries to fill in, because they know it will be a waste of time. It will have impact on nothing. So why bother? And the final point on this one, for the actual decision makers that are listening to us: question everything that risk managers are bringing to you. I mean, most of the stuff that risk managers out there are using is just absolute rubbish. Question everything. Where is it coming from? How will that improve your decision making? Ask that question every single time. How will that improve your decision making? And don't just ask internal risk managers. Let's be a little bit more open about this. Ask every single audit committee member that suggests that you suddenly need a risk appetite statement. Ask them, how on earth will that change our decision-making process? On top of the limits that you have in all the policies anyway, and segregation of duties and approval limits, which is actually risk appetite that existed for the last 50 or so years. Ask them, challenge everyone who brings something new under the banner of risk. As a general rule, I mean, it's really simple. As a general rule, if the concept has the word risk in the title, that's a pretty good indication it's risk management 1. And risk management 1 is a polite way of calling it bullshit, basically. So, second point. Once we start investigating, well, what is science telling us? You actually discover that there are a lot of very sensible tools and techniques that help people actually make better decisions. And a few points I wanted to make here: that risk management is ultimately about changing the way people behave and make decisions, make uncertain future material decisions. So first point is kind of an obvious one. Risk analysis, I hope you realize that. I mean, I hope we're on the same page, at least on this point, and you don't have to agree with everything I say. Luckily, I have the other 60 workshops to prove my point. But anyway, you still don't have to agree with me. Risk analysis makes much less sense after the decision is taken. And this is the scariest thing I hear. I hear executives say. I mean, this is literally the worst thing you want to hear in the risk management training. An executive getting up and saying, "I've just signed the multi-million-dollar contract. Where was your risk management?" I mean, that was just, that is embarrassment. Of course, risk managers were busy, preparing for the next quarterly risk workshops, because supposedly they're more important than signing, multi-million-dollar agreements, where all the risks are taken. And once they're taken, I mean, good luck re-signing that contract afterwards, just because risk managers in the next quarter discovered that actually a lot of the risks were ignored while that contract was structured. So, don't do it. In reality, of course, risk analysis should have a direct and immediate impact on decisions. And decision makers should be rewarded for informed risk taking. And I mean, again, this is, for some reason, this is a very hard point to understand. Risk analysis should happen before a decision is taking place. Yes, but it shouldn't just be, here's your decision, here are the risks that we identified, please consider them. No, that does not work. The information about risks should have a direct and immediate impact on the decision. What this essentially means, I mean, for example, investment projects. probably the easiest one to implement risk management ever. Once your risk analysis shows that the volatility associated with that investment project is significant, so that investment project would be considered high risk. Once you determine that something is considered high risk, then additional requirements should automatically kick in. For example, if there is an IRR hurdle rate, if there is like a target that we can't invest into anything below 8% return, then that requirement should be different for a higher risk project. There should be, the expectation should be different, the requirements should be different, the deal structure should be different, the legal documents associated with this project should be different, the monitoring should be different. What I'm trying to say is that once your risk analysis proves a hypothesis that something is high or low risk, then your approach should change based on that risk analysis. Like literally, the NPV formula should be different, but if it's a high or low risk project. And when I say different NPV formula, for example, the discount rate may be different for different types of projects. And the next point is also very important. Decision makers should be rewarded for informed risk taking. And without trying to contradict my previous point, I'll try to make this as clear as possible. The companies are already highly bureaucratic. So risk management is not about making companies more bureaucratic in their decision-making process. It's actually the opposite. It's about unraveling some of the bureaucracy and rewarding informed risk-taking. What I'm trying to say is that, for example, if you've done your risk analysis and it shows that the project is high risk, then your approach should be as per the policy, as per the guideline or as per the policy. However, if your analysis shows that this project is low risk, then you should have a much easier approval process. So this is the kind of logic where if the risk is sensible, reasonable, then the decision makers should be rewarded and the process for decision making should be simplified. So this is very important. I hope that kind of gets across properly. Once something is high risk, it shouldn't be more difficult. It should be normal. But once something is low risk, it should be much, much easier. And that's how you encourage people to do proper risk analysis and try to structure projects and approach and they set up their KPIs in the way that is actually taking on less risk for the company. Again, subject to the company not being particularly risk-taking to begin with. And during the Risk Awareness Week, a lot of the speakers will show you how to change the actual decision-making based on risk analysis. And even more, I mean, Sam Savage, I think it will be on Wednesday, has an amazing session. He will talk about making uncertainty live. He will demonstrate how you can show uncertainty affecting the decisions in real time using just basic Excel, nothing fancy, using just basic Excel to properly communicate to the decision maker. I mean, that point is just absolutely fundamental. As the risk manager, you don't have to make the decision yourself. You have to show the full spectrum of possible outcomes to the decision makers, illustrate to them what the kind of efficient frontier is, what's the right balance between the reward and risk, get them to appreciate the balance and make the decision where they kind of feel more comfortable along this frontier of the perfect balance between the risk and reward. And decision makers do call risk managers to help you better structure decisions, to give you more options. I mean, some of the research on strategic decision making was horrible. A group of scientists tested 130 decisions and they found that 70% of the time decisions were binary. Binary means basically do this or do nothing. That is literally the worst possible situation you can be in, because there's always do nothing or do this or that or that or that or that. You have 15, 20 different options to achieve the same objective. And it's all about seeing the whole spectrum of possibilities and then choosing the more optimal decision. So, if you remember anything from this session, keep in mind, binary decision making is evil. If you just, just in your personal life, always come back to it. If you're thinking about, should I do it or should I not do it, that's an evil decision, because it's never that simple. It's always, shall I do this or that or that or that, or do nothing. Keep in mind, you have to force yourself to switch to system two thinking. And more importantly, risk analysis can actually help protect decision makers. And I mean, I hope decision makers use it more often. It's a great protection when in 3 years' time, state prosecution office asks you, why did you make that decision? You have a very solid defense saying that at the time of making decisions, we've actually identified and documented the risks that were reasonable for us to identify at the time. And we were like, you would have made the same decision given the circumstances. Next point, give, not take. I mean, this is huge. I mean, if risk management is a supporting function, why on earth are we constantly chasing people for information? Why do we make decision makers sit through risk workshops and give us risks, then give us likelihoods, then give us consequences, then give us mitigations, and then we pull it all together and give back the risk report? I mean, is that seriously what companies are paying for? I mean, this just sounds nonsense. I mean, the average risk management salary does not justify that level of value. I mean, any student, any graduate can do that kind of activity, and it will be as useful as what the mature risk managers are doing, because the techniques you're probably using are non-scientific anyway, so it's no better than just guessing. And anyone can, it doesn't matter whether a young person makes a guess or an old person facilitates the guess. It's still guessing, and we can do better than that. So risk managers really need to start doing their homework. I mean, this is a huge takeaway. I've just had an instance where I was in the Middle East doing a risk assessment for compliance purposes, and the client asked me to conduct an 8-hour, possibly 2-day workshop with the business unit head to identify all the risks, and then identify all the mitigations, and then test the control again, discuss control effectiveness, and so on. And I said, of course we will never do that. I mean, that is just insane. I mean, do you seriously want the business unit head to hate you and never invite you for proper decision making? Why? Because we already have all of that information. We have last year's risk report, we have performance reports for that business unit, we have internal audits that highlight all the control inefficiencies, we have policies and procedures, we have guidelines that outline all the controls and all the risks in the process. We have so much information. We have statistics from the industry, we have our own risk management expertise. We can do all of this in homework and then have a much shorter, maybe half an hour, maybe less, meeting with the head of the business unit to just validate whether we've missed something or not. Use the business's time wisely. I mean, having ridiculous long workshops, trying to get the information that you should be, as the risk manager, you should be having anyway, is absolute negligence in my opinion. So make sure you do the homework. You can get most of the information you need from just working with the other supporting functions in the back office. And that's why one of my next points is you don't have to do it alone. You can actually use a lot of the other back office departments. I mean, you can talk to finance to appreciate tax and financial risks and foreign exchange risks. You can talk to marketing to appreciate demand risks. You can talk to technology or strategy department to appreciate any technological trends. You can talk to IT department to appreciate the information security and information risks. You can actually do the homework and collect all the necessary information to do proper risk analysis. And then the kind of the last point for the risk managers on this one, it's a choice. You have to make a choice at some stage whether you become the center of competency and excellence for dealing with uncertainty. So you do all of the risk analysis, all the models, all the decisions come to you, and you run simulations, and you do the risk analysis. Or you can actually outsource as much as possible. You can teach the finance team to do their own simulation on budgeting. You can teach procurement team to do their own scoring when they identify and assess new vendors. You can teach the strategy department to do simulation on their long-term planning, and so on. It's entirely your choice whether you do everything yourself or you outsource everything, but you always have to do a lot of homework. And the point here for decision makers, ask more from your risk team. I mean, when they just come and claim information from you, and they constantly ask for forms to be filled in or risk registers to be updated, say no. Say you do it yourself, and you can ask me all the information you want, and I'll give you access to the documents that already have all that information. You don't have to always start from a blank piece of paper, because most of that has been documented by the organization already. And last point, very quickly, because I know I'm conscious of time, and I want to finish this in under 1 hour, so you're not late for the next workshop that Sam is doing. One decision at a time. The biggest mistake I see risk managers is that they read another marketing brochure that ERM is wonderful, and they're trying to come up with an approach that will change the whole organization-wide approach to risk management. That is nonsense. Every decision is different. You would have a different risk methodology for every type of decisions. Every stakeholder is different. So it's literally selling to individuals to help them make better decisions, as opposed to coming up with some broad approach that will supposedly satisfy everyone. That is physically impossible. I mean, that particular piece of marketing is absolute nonsense. I mean, I'm sorry, we still have to use ERM in our discussions. That is silly. And of course, people will always argue to me, we still need a holistic picture of risks. Sure, if you want. I mean, just take the strategy, run simulations on the strategy, and incorporate the risks into that high-level picture. That will give you as holistic as you bloody want. Holistic on the cash flow, holistic on the value of the company, holistic on liquidity problems, and so on. Holistic is not synonymous to ERM. ERM is synonymous to consulting, marketing, BS. So don't fall into that trap. If you want to start moving to risk management too, it's one decision at a time. Find one individual within the company who wants better analysis, better ammunition around the decision that they're making, and offer them risk analysis techniques that will help them make better decisions, that will help protect them against future auditing of the decision quality, that will give them additional ammunition to negotiate with external parties, for example. And then once you've done that for a single person, then you move on to the next person. And it will be completely different challenges, completely different problems, completely different techniques possibly, and so on. And you move from one person to another, solving one decision type problem at the time. And then overall, you will have a very good view of what are the different risks associated with each of the decisions. Now, of course, the regulators and the auditors are not going to go away, and they will still require a corporate risk profile, which is supposedly an overarching picture of how risks affect the company. Well, the right solution is take the strategy and simulate the uncertainty within that strategy to show how risks affect cash flow and liquidity. The other solution is just do risk management one. They want a risk profile, give them a risk profile, but do the homework, do everything yourself. I mean, don't send out forms to complete. Again, this is something that we've learned for risk psychology. If you're sending out templates to complete for the decision makers or the business unit heads and identify risks and assess those risks, the information that you will get is just nonsense. It will be completely untruthful and pretty much useless for any kind of future analysis. So why waste people's time if they're going to give you not truthful information anyway? So yeah, you can find other ways of finding that information yourself. Do the homework. Stop wasting business's time on risk management one. Because if you stop wasting business's time on risk management one, if you actually demonstrate to them that you've just saved them weeks of work, because they would have to do it anyway, because some regulator is still silly enough asking about risk appetite statement or a risk report, which is just as crazy to have, because in the following sessions you will hear how you can do proper business performance reporting adjusted for risk, as opposed to doing a separate risk report, and it's actually much more meaningful, much better anyway. So since the regulators are not going to go away anytime soon, and which is, by the way, actually good that they're asking for those things, because imagine if they were asking the right questions. I mean, that would actually be difficult. But right now, having a dialogue with regulators and auditors is super easy, because they're asking for all the wrong questions, and if they insist, give them something. Just don't waste business's time. And once you stop wasting business's time, they will appreciate it enough to give you a chance to actually help them with decision making. At the moment, the perception of risk management is that it's those guys that waste our time once a quarter doing workshops and compiling those ridiculous risk registers that no one ever uses for any kind of serious decision making anyway. And once you kind of get rid of that reputation, you have a chance to be allowed near the decisions enough to be able to apply your risk analysis. So that's from me. I mean, I hope I fulfilled my obligation to be as bloody controversial as possible. I mean, after all, I do claim that Risk Academy blog is the most controversial, possibly the most controversial risk management blog on the planet. I've tried my best to find speakers that will demonstrate the examples and case studies that prove the claims that I've just made in the session. So enjoy the Risk Awareness Week. You will learn a lot, both as the risk manager and as the decision maker. I mean, this is groundbreaking stuff. This is very different to traditional risk management conferences. And use this opportunity to raise risk awareness in your organization as well. Risk Awareness Week is not just a conference, online conference that will run for 5 days. Risk Awareness Week is literally a reason to start doing some of the things that you wanted to do in your corporation. And I've given you a lot of resources. For example, I've given you a proper risk identification template. If you registered for the conference, you received it in an email recently from me, summarizing day 5 and giving you this free template. I'll make it available in the Risk Academy blog anyway, very soon. I'm giving you quite a few templates to assess maturity, to implement risk management, like a step-by-step guide to implementing risk management. There are a lot of resources. Use Risk Awareness Week as an excuse to start something new, start some small transformation in your organization, and help the decision makers make better decisions. I hope you enjoy this week, and I'll see you in the other sessions. Bye.